If you're a player of the video game Sekiro, I believe you still remember the Ashina Rifleman as an impressive game whose background was set in the Sengoku period. This musket of the Rifleman was one of the most classic weapons in this era. So today, let's talk about this, the Japanese muskets. Tanegashima was always a small island in Japan, but as the famous story would be known until the 16th century, in around 1543. The Japanese documented the time was 1543, but some of the Portuguese missionary and explorer believed the time was in 1542 or 1544. This island became one of the most impressive places in history, because the Portuguese Matchlock musket came to this small island. In this year, some Portuguese arrived on this island by a Chinese ship, whose owner was the famous pirate in the state of East Asia, Wang Zhi. At this time, the Portuguese brought their Matchlock musket and arrived on the Tanegashima island. Because of the different language of them, they had to write the Chinese characters on the paper in order to communicate. After this communication, two of this group of Portuguese merchants as the representatives used their Matchlock musket in front of the island owner, Tanegashima Togitaka, to show how to use the musket and the power of it. Then, perhaps due to this demonstration, it was very smooth and the musket showed the situation which made Togitaka very satisfied. So Togitaka just bought both Matchlock muskets from the two Portuguese businessmen's hands. Soon after Togitaka learning how to use Matchlock musket, he met the head of Skibo or Skinobo, Tsutakaigazu, and Skibo was the sub-temple of Negoroji Temple, and he was very interested in the muskets and hoped that he could have one as well. If we look back to the history, this gun might be the basic of the Negoroju, who were famous for the guns in the future, and finally became a group of powerful monk soldiers in the Japanese history. So then, maybe after some complications of the trade or some other things, finally Togitaka gave one of both muskets to Tsutakaigazu. From this moment, the people like Togitaka, Tsutakaigazu started to try to reproduce the Matchlock musket and made the gunpowder with their team. And also, there were people trying to go to Tanegashima Island in order to learn the musket technology, just like the businessman Tatsubanaya Matasaburo came from Sakai, which is a district of the Osaka city nowadays. In addition, actually his aim was clear, it was just for business. After 2 years, he completed the learning lessons and returned to Sakai. Then, he started to his gun business, building and selling the muskets, and his work was called the table mata. Just like what we see, from the first generation muskets to the Meiji Restoration, actually the Japanese Matchlock musket almost had not changed. When European firearms entered the flintlock era, Japanese firearms still kept in the Matchlock type, but in fact, some researchers speculated that maybe it was because the quality of Japanese local flints and iron couldn't get to the good level. It causes that, compared with the Matchlock, the fire failure rate of a flintlock or wheellock might be higher than the Matchlock, so the flintlock and the wheellock muskets were not mass-produced. Then, in the Edo period, the firearms were not only a weapon but also a kind of a competition. The springs of a flintlock was stronger than the Japanese snap matchlock, so when pulling the trigger, the flintlock might have more shake, so it makes the accuracy drop. Actually, according to the result of muzzle-lead shooting competitions, nowadays, Japanese muskets results were always not bad. So this theory might be the real. In addition, since the muskets were reproduced successfully, there was a whole jutsu created, the art of gunnery, is a martial art of Japan dedicated to Japanese black powder firearm usage. Nowadays, the gallery performances of many videos which we can watch on the internet. This is the Hojutsu in Japan. But for final conclusions, we had to wait for the historians to complete the research. In fact, besides the Matchlock, there were exactly other trigger system, like the wheel lock musket and the percussion cap musket. But the flintlock musket was a kind of rare musket in Japan. Compared with the wheel lock and the flintlock, the percussion musket were commoner before Japan decided to learn to Western totally, and after having seen the new firearms type from West. Many traditional Japanese muskets were modified to change into the percussion cap trigger system, took the place of the matchlock. But soonly, those traditional firearms were changed into the modern firearms in the late part of 19th century. So since this moment, the classical table became a collection of just those under the hunting tool from the remote areas, but not the military gun in army. In Japanese matchlock muskets, actually there were so many types that appeared in history, and mostly they were classified by their size or bullet size, but not by the trigger system. Generally, they can have 7 types. One of them are the small size muskets, and the other can be defined as the big size. But before realizing the classical musket, we need to know a traditional Japanese unit of weight. This is a momme. After Meiji Restoration, 1 momme equal 3.75 grams. But in ancient times, like in the Edo period, 1 momme was about 3.73 grams. Okay, after that, the first type which we will see is the most familiar and the typical Japanese musket type, kozutsu, which means the small gun barrel. So this kind of musket is smaller in comparison. This is a kind of normal size, and in history, this kind of type of musket were equipped in the armsets and the hunters. The weight of its bullets was usually 2.5 momme. It's about 9.3 grams. In contrast, there is the big one. This is the nakazutsu, which means the middle-sized gun barrel, and uses the 6 momme round weight bullet, which is about 22.4 or 22.5 grams. So it makes this type of musket more powerful, and it also causes that the nakazutsu is more expensive and heavier than the kozutsu, and the recoil indeed also was stronger. So in history, this type of musket might be a kind of the defense weapon and fortress, or the secondary weapon besides the kozutsu in army, like this the bajozutsu and tanzutsu, which mean the cavalry version gun barrel and the short barrel. Actually, both types are similar. Their lengths both are about 15 centimeters, and they also have a pistol look. And because of its pistol shape, people can hold it just with one hand. But the difference is that bajozutsu's bullet is bigger than the other one, which is about 5 momme, and the little musket is about 2 or 3 momme. Now it's the most powerful part, the big size types. The first one is the samurai jutsu. Sometimes its kanji is this, samurai jutsu. Different kanji, but the meaning is the same, which means the samurai version's gun barrel. This is the smallest type in the big gun class, but even then, generally its bullet a 10 momme weight, and the caliber is nearly 20 millimeters. However, more power and larger size, it means more recoil and higher production price. So it is mostly that only samurai might be able to use this kind of musket in history. Next is the hazama-zi-zi, which means the impressure gun barrier. So it's clear that this is a kind of defense weapon at a fortress. But in fact, when we see its bullet has only 2 or 3 movement, maybe couldn't be defined as a big gun, because it's almost the same the bullets of Tan-zi-zi. But the hazama-zi-zi musket has around 150 centimeters to 200 centimeters length. I guess this may not be a small gun, right? Okay, the last one. It is also the largest one, but rather than being identified as a gun, it can be called a cannon. Not only because of its impressive look, but also its exaggerated bullet. It has a 30 movement to 1 hand weight. Here, according to the traditional Japanese unit of weight rules, 1 can is equal 1000 movement. So the biggest bullet of this type of musket is about 3.75 kilograms, and this type is the ozi-zi, the big gun barrier. Usually, this musket or cannon was used to be a weapon in naval battles and siege battles. Okay, this is the ancient Japanese musket, but to be honest, as a kind of very unique classic muzzle-loaded musket in history, I believe that there are many stories which can be shared in future videos hidden in the history. So this is the reason why I decided to name this video The First Look. So I'm looking forward to sharing more stories in the future. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day. See you next time. Bye.